help for an at-risk population. The aid group Refugee offers learning programs for refugee women and girls in Kenya.
Hoping to improve the country's food security and boost agricultural technology innovation, the African Development Bank plans to establish 8 agro-industrial processing zones in Nigeria. Hello, thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories near and far. I'm Joke Rogers at Channels Television here in Lagos, and I'm joined by Vincent Makori from the Voice of America in Washington.
Well, thanks. I'm Vincent Makori at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Our broadcast here looks a little different because of the global pandemic, but we truly appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Channels Television in Lagos brings you that story.
As part of efforts in industrializing the agricultural industry in Nigeria, the African Development Bank is planning to establish 8 special agro-industrial processing zones across the country. The plan is expected to address issues of technical innovation and mechanization, which has become a major challenge to agricultural development, especially in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic.
How to make the nation's agriculture sector contribute significantly to the nation's socio-economic development is the reason for this meeting, which had experts and development partners in attendance. Reports by the International Fund for Agricultural Development reveal that Nigeria is endowed with 34 million hectares of arable land and abundant water resources in excess of 200 billion cubic meters. While there's been an increase in per capita production of root tubers and other crops, its ability to support the nation's exponential growth, which is estimated at 360 million by 2050, remains worrisome.
If we want to industrialize meaningfully and the stabilized relationship between agriculture and the industry, you have to mechanize. The usual way of taking your hoe and arrow to go to the farm and the cutlass has to give way to modern way of farming.
The African Development Bank also shares a similar sentiment and plans to intervene.
We are going to the board on October 8 with the first set of 8 locations in Nigeria. There are 8 locations in Nigeria, which the Ministry of Agriculture is actually the executing agency. 2, one in Kano, another in Kaduna, one in FCTA, one in Kwara, one in Ogun, one in Oyo, and one in Imo and across River State. And we are going to be working together to ensure that we start this year.
The United Kingdom is also willing to support the sector to boost food security.
We all know that a sustainable and efficient farming sector is a fundamental part of the security of Nigeria's economy and its people. Governments continue to have a key role in regulating and enabling the sector. But let's give the private sector the support it needs to create jobs and bring its expertise to bear. I give you 3 examples. Encourage the free flow of goods within and beyond Nigeria.
Insecurity, climate change, poor infrastructure, and lack of mechanization has been the bane of agriculture and food production in the country, which has led to an unprecedented rise in food prices.
Joining us now is Professor Banji Oyelaron Oyeyinka, the Senior Special Assistant to the AFDB President on Industrialization. Thank you for joining us today on Africa 54.
Thank you so much. My pleasure joining you.
So help us understand the plans by the African Development Bank to establish 8 special agro-industrial processing zones in Nigeria that will industrialize Nigeria's agricultural sector.
Thank you so much. As many of our viewers may know already, we had this plan started in 2019, April, and we've had several conversations with the federal government, with several stakeholders. We screened several states based on the readiness criteria that we had, and we arrived at the first 8 locations, first 8 states that are ready based on those criteria. Of course, that doesn't mean we are not doing other states.
In fact, we already have others that are lined up for the next phase. For this year alone, we have so many partners lining up, also co-financing with us, including Islamic Development Bank, including IFAD, including Bank of Industry. So the whole idea is to use the zone arrangement. As you know, this is an idea that is not new. It started in the 80s with Chinese who actually carve out specific geographic locations to basically just address the infrastructure deficit. You know, Nigeria is a very huge country. We lack power, we lack roads, we lack all manner of things. So what we try to do, and what the zonal arrangement, which we call clustering and agglomeration does, is to arrive at a certain location, say take 400 hectares of land, and then you put in all of the required infrastructure, road, irrigation, all manner of things, particularly for agro-industrial zone as we have it. So that's what we have done, and we hope to do it all across the country. We hope this is going to be a game changer for Nigeria. And what are the functions? Number one is that, as I said, you address the infrastructure deficit that discourages private sectors from locating in a particular state or a particular geographic zone. Number two is that it's a spatial solution to the unsustainable migration of people from rural areas to urban areas. So the whole idea is to take the infrastructure, and this is a unique thing about the special agro-industrial processing zone, as different from your special economic zone. Most special economic zones are located near a port, they are located near a seaport, they are located near highways and rail. They simply process and export out of those places. The idea of the SAPZ is a deliberate policy instrument to locate all of these facilities within what we call peri-urban areas.
And the theme for this year is targeted at resuscitating Nigeria's food system after the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, you know, this Delta variant is still around, so we still have to be cautious. But the economy is starting to open up again. How can we make building and strengthening Nigeria's food systems a collective responsibility, especially with the effect of the pandemic on food production itself?
Yeah, I mean, the Nigeria right now, the food system issue is connected to the upcoming UN Global Food System Summit, and it's coming at the very right time. When you look at our country, and sadly to say, we are classified now among those 10 countries that are food in crisis stage. We are no more in emergency, we are in a crisis state in terms of food supply, hunger. Is rooted in not just today, the conflicts of today, which is aggravating by the day, and everybody seems perplexed. We don't seem to be able to solve it. But actually, the remote cause is what I mentioned earlier about our pathology of dependence on oil. You know, when you depend on minerals or oil, I can tell you there's no country, except for a few you can count on your fingers, small countries with a very small population, Qatar and a few others. There is no country oil dependence, not oil abundance, not the word, oil dependence. They don't prosper. There is no such country. All of them in Africa, take all of them, DRC, Nigeria, Angola, Guinea, Mali, all of these fragile countries, they depend on bauxite, uranium, oil. They are poor countries. That's why Nigeria has become a very poor country, because we are not diversifying our economy.
We'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time today, Mr. Banji Oyelaran Oyeyinka, the Senior Special Assistant to the AFDB President on Industrialization. Thank you for joining us today on Africa 54.
Some Nigerian companies are using coconut and palm shells to make charcoal briquettes in an effort to slow ongoing deforestation. Nigeria banned charcoal exports after World Bank report showed the country lost nearly half of its forest cover in just a decade. Timothy Obiezu reports from Kuje, Nigeria.
Sorting through coconut shells before they are thrown into a burning pot. Nothing goes to waste at this coconut processing facility outside Abuja. Owner Emeka Ogweje says it all began 10 years ago.
We began thinking it was to say, okay, let our waste become the necessary energy to make fire. And this is where we have come.
The result is rich in carbon content, a prerequisite for fuel. It is cooled, ground, and manually molded into briquettes.
We intend to introduce several types of machines. Few amongst them is the molder, the cutter, and the drying system, a dehydrator that will bring these briquettes into a more solid form.
Ogweje's company, which makes products made from coconut, is one of many in Nigeria using coconut briquettes as fuel instead of wood charcoal. Experts say Nigeria's huge charcoal market causes major environmental repercussions. Conservationist David Michael Terungwa, who founded the Global Initiative for Food Security and Ecosystem Preservation, says a lack of compliance with Nigeria's charcoal export ban is to blame for continued deforestation.
There is a lack of political will to end this practice in Nigeria. For the World Bank report of 2017, it is in our acts, the NESRA Acts of 2014, banning the production and export of charcoal in Nigeria. But I think the issue is compliance and compliance monitoring and enforcement by the regulatory agency.
Nigerian authorities have been encouraging tree planting to replace decimated forests. But experts say in the absence of adequate policing, Nigerians must make a conscious effort to use other alternatives to tree-derived charcoal for fuel. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja, Nigeria.
A hyena may not be your average house pet, but in northern Nigeria, some men keep the animals in their homes, display them at festivals, and even use their dung to make remedies. However, it appears the tradition is dying, as one traditional leader says the culture is clashing with modern ideas about animal welfare.
A hyena may not be your average house pet, but in northern Nigeria, some men keep the creatures in their homes, display them at festivals, and even use their dung or saliva to make remedies. Abdullahi Jahun comes from a line of hyena men. He learned how to tame and handle a hyena from his father and now makes a living with them.
This was my job when I started walking as a child. I used to see my elders do it and became enthusiastic about it. Then I started it and I'm performing till date. I used to be a spectator, but now I perform at shows and people watch.
Jahun says he captured his hyena 2 years ago and has taken it to events such as festivals, coronations of traditional rulers, and durbas, a type of parade where horsemen in colorful costumes show off their skills to honor a local emir. Jahun and his hyena usually appear alongside other street performers such as snake charmers, drummers, and dancers.
It is part of our culture and tradition, and it has been established for a long time, since our parents and our grandparents.
Depending on the size of the crowd, he makes between 8,000 and 20,000 naira per appearance. Hyenas are often viewed as repulsive and sinister, partly due to their scavenging habits in the wild, but traditional leader Nasir Wada says hyena men have been part of popular culture in northern Nigeria for many generations.
Clashes of culture between what we know for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and what modernity is trying to bring to us. What you have seen now is a dying art or dying breed or a dying aspect of the culture. It used to be really prolific, but not anymore, because even the hyenas are endangered.
WADA acknowledged that the ways of hyena men may not chime with modern ideas about treatment of animals, and conservationists have raised questions about how they are captured and kept.
It's time now for a short break. As we do, we remind you to visit our website, channelstv.com, for news and programming around the clock. You can also find us at youtube.com/channelsweb. Still to come, skiing the Drakensberg mountain range. Even during the pandemic, adventurous skiers head to the slopes of Lesotho for fun in the snow.
Welcome back to Africa 54. I'm Vincent Makori in Washington. Now, female refugees are among the most vulnerable to losing out on education, a problem made worse by the coronavirus pandemic. To combat the challenge, U.S.-funded aid group Refugee offers learning programs for refugee women and girls in Kenya. Brenda Molinya reports from Nairobi.
Fartum Garad fled Somalia to a Kenya refugee camp after militia attacked her home and killed her father 4 years ago. She joined her only surviving relative in Nairobi and was able to get support and education even during the pandemic thanks to a U.S.-funded aid group Refugee.
During the pandemic, we are given funds that we are learning at home. Yeah, it was a little bit, it was challenging because of the network connection, because of the distraction of the neighbor. It was very hard to concentrate the class at the full time. Sometimes maybe we don't listen well the way the teacher is explaining.
Refugee supports refugee women and girls in Kenya because they are more likely to miss out on education and be exploited than males. The coronavirus pandemic has made them even more vulnerable, says Refugee Kenya CEO Geoffrey Thige.
They're the ones who are vulnerable to sexual gender-based violence at the home level. When they are exposed to especially a lot of free time, they end up being very needy. And being needy, they end up also being vulnerable to issues to do with prostitution. And these are economical challenges that these young girls have.
Refugee provides a safe house for refugee girls and their children, as well as education and job skills training. Ethiopian refugee Dera Anyanya has lived in Kenya with her parents since she was 2 years old. Refugees Girl Empowerment Program has helped her pursue a dream of becoming a computer programmer.
As refugees, most of us, we are taken as ladies, most of us, we are taken as we are supposed to stay home, do the household chores, get married, get children, take care of the children, your family. So that's why you find more refugees, men or boys, are more educated than the ladies.
The United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, says there are more than 80,000 urban refugees and asylum seekers in Kenya, 80% of them women and children.
They're facing a lot of cultural barrier which make them forcibly married or early married, and also that they're exposed to a lot of sexual and gender-based violence, and also that lack of education and lack of livelihood opportunity.
Those are challenges that aid groups like Refugee are helping women and girl refugees in Kenya to overcome. Brenda Molinya for VOA News, Nairobi.
So just a holiday in Africa and few think of skiing, but tucked into southern Africa's stunning Drakensberg range, one resort in the mountain kingdom of Lesotho is seeking to cash in on tourists, seeking a more adventurous skiing destination than the well-known slopes of Europe's Alps. This comes despite visitor numbers being drastically slashed by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Hopra Makojo is having a good day. The skiing and snowboarding instructor from Lesotho is slicing and gliding his way down a snow-covered slope. So just a holiday in Africa, and most people picture a baking hot sun, palm-fringed beaches, or herds of wild beasts galloping across the savannah. Few think of skiing. Yet the continent contains 5 mountain ranges with enough seasonal snow to make potential slopes, of which 2 host rudimentary ski resorts. Tucked in South Africa's stunning Drakensberg range, one such resort is the mountain kingdom of Lesotho, and it attracts tourists seeking a more adventurous skiing destination, despite visitor numbers being drastically slashed by COVID-19.
Africa is, you wouldn't actually even think of it. I think that's what actually amazes most people, because they're like, okay, let's see what we have. Yes, it isn't much, but people come in and have a whole lot of fun. Let alone, for me as a local, I don't have to fly out of it yet. I've got a vacation right here.
When Ramakojo isn't enjoying himself on the slopes, he's teaching visitors to take up the unlikely pastime.
Come back again and back.
It is my first time here. It was something very different. My knees and feet were paining. I broke a sweat, unexpectedly, but it was mad fun.
As with other tourist spots, the COVID-19 pandemic had severe travel restrictions enforced worldwide to try to curb it, has drastically slashed visitors' numbers.
When you talk about skiing and snow, people don't relate to Africa. I mean, it's like you say, people think of the Alps and the Rockies in Canada and, like bigger mountains. But, I mean, this area of Lesotho is actually got quite a unique climate, and also because of the altitude. I mean, we're sitting at 3,000 meters where we're standing now. Top of the mountain is just 3,222.
But for those who are still able to make their way to Afri-Ski, Ramakojo will be waiting to teach them. Regional hub South Africa has been badly hit by the pandemic, with 2.6 million recorded coronavirus cases, and is on most countries' red lists.
When COVID-19 hit, the world was not ready. The pandemic showed us major gaps in our preparation and ability to respond to the virus. Health experts say we will have another one. VOA's Cara Pearson reports that it doesn't have to be as bad as COVID-19.
As some countries prepare for yet another wave of the coronavirus, doctors in countries with a surplus of vaccines are begging people to get vaccinated.
I'm Dr. Michael Bolding. I've been working our COVID unit for the last 16 months. I get asked on a daily basis now what our COVID unit looks like.
Bolding says he is now seeing very sick, unvaccinated patients in their 20s and 30s.
With no comorbid conditions, ending up on ventilators, BiPAP, high flow oxygen, and extremely sick, sicker than at any time during this pandemic.
With a vaccine, severe illness and death from COVID-19 can be avoided.
We're calling for a global goal of 717, 7 days to detect an outbreak, 1 day to notify an outbreak, and 7 days to mount an effective response.
VOA interviewed Amanda McClelland at a summit on disease prevention and control. She says it's possible to prevent epidemics and cites Uganda as an example. Uganda stopped a recent Ebola outbreak at its border with the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Uganda responded to the risk and mobilized their communities, mobilized their health systems to strengthen surveillance along the border, and was able to detect Ebola cases and care for those patients effectively, and they didn't have an Ebola outbreak.
In fact, a study released in April by Resolve to Save Lives that's called Epidemics That Didn't Happen included multiple examples of situations where countries avoided or stopped epidemics. Here's another example. In 2014, Nigeria stopped an Ebola outbreak, and in 2016, Brazil prevented a yellow fever epidemic from taking hold. In both cases, health officials implemented coordinated response activities, effective communication, and dedicated leadership. McClelland says the key is good leadership and building trust at the community level.
You can't just come when something bad happens. You have to be there all of the time. You have to meet the communities where they are and address their everyday health needs, and that builds trust.
McClelland says trust, good journalism, and a strong civil society help communities push back against disinformation and politicizing diseases, vaccines, and treatments. Carol Pearson, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCoy in Washington. Channels Television has our last word from Lagos.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. ChannelsTV.com, remember, is your source for news and other programming. I'm Joker Rogers. Thank you for watching and goodbye.